alaikum. Welcome to another episode of AAGAHI with your host, WARISA ZAINAB. In today's show, we have Fadwa Abdul Ghafoor, who is a registered dietitian, and she's joining us all the way from Trinidad. And in today's episode, we shall be talking about how the female hormones affects the psychology. We can see that there is a strong link between hormones inside the body of a woman and how her behavior is impacted as a result. Her moods, her emotions, her feelings, they're all kind of affected as a result of these hormonal imbalances that occur within the body. To understand things furthermore, let's welcome our guest, Fadwa. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, Sister Warsa. How are you today?
Alhamdulillah, I'm good. And you? It's nice and sunny in Trinidad?
Yes, it is. It's very bright. We have full sunlight today.
MashaAllah. Ramadan Kareem to you. And I hope, inshallah, you're enjoying the blessings of this month.
Yes, Alhamdulillah. It's going well so far. It's such a blessed month to be in.
Definitely, definitely. And I thought it's important to talk about our diets and the things that we consume because it often has a really important effect on the overall well-being and psychology, but we often kind of neglect it, and as soon as we break our fast we kind of just go for things that may not always be healthy for our mind and our body. So inshallah, let's talk about how there is a connection between our mental health and our hormones.
Yes, there's definitely a connection with our mental health and our hormones, and specifically the gut-brain connection. Most people don't realize that our guts produce 70% of our hormones. And if we don't watch what we put into our bodies, it will indirectly affect our hormonal balance. And we are seeing more and more that a lot of women and even men are falling prey to hormonal imbalances. So it's resulting in a lot of reproductive issues and also a lot of sperm mortality when it comes to reduced testosterone in men. So indirectly, it affects fertility and population development, especially amongst, well, all races, all creeds. They're seeing it worldwide.
And there are numerous studies and researches that indicate that in women, hormonal imbalance can often cause depression, anxiety, even insomnia, and like you mentioned, fertility problems. So first of all, how can we detect that there is an imbalance of some sort? How do we determine that?
First of all, you would tend to see irregularities in your menstrual cycle. Some women may have missed periods, some may have excessively heavy periods, along with a lot of intense period pains. Now, most people don't realize that menstrual pains are not normal. And once you're getting that, it means that something is really off in your body. And missing your monthly cycle is also not normal. So those are key indicators of it. Sometimes you tend to have, along with those, in the case of like polycystic ovarian syndrome, you get the appearance of excessive body hair, especially on the tummy area, the arms, the legs. Sometimes you tend to have facial hair in women. They tend to see like the morning shadow around the mouth. Yeah, and they tend to grow little stubbles. That's a key indication that testosterone levels are way too high.
Right.
And there needs to be some balancing.
Anything else one should look out for? Say, for example, if it's not PCOS, what about other underlying problems?
With other underlying problems, you tend to have a lot of mood swings,
Right.
a lot of irritability, the good old PMS that we go through every month.
Yeah.
That as well has its extremes because you could have an overproduction of estrogen, which causes lethargy. You have irritability, mood swings, depression, anxiety, and low estrogen levels also does the same. It also makes you irritable, gets you into a depressed mood, as well as increase your anxiety.
Right. So how can you determine if this is when it comes to diagnosis, how do you know that the root cause behind your mood swings or emotions is actually psychological, or biological? How can you determine that if you're not a professional, for example?
Well, automatically, if you record or check yourself throughout the month and you look at what you ate, what occurred that day, the time of your monthly cycle, then you get to determine, well, okay, this doesn't usually happen at this time, but it's happening this month. What did I have to eat? What did I have to drink? Where did I go to? Because sometimes we don't realize that frequency also affects our psychological health and our overall health. So if we are in an area where our frequency is off, high frequency, we are functioning through trauma, it also affects our hormones because, there's an increase in cortisol hormone, which is the stress hormone, which decreases serotonin, the happy hormone, and it automatically causes an imbalance in your reproductive hormones, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone.
So what you're saying is that what we consume on a daily basis will definitely have a direct effect on the cycle and the hormones associated with that, and it may even cause problems such as mood swings or irritability, insomnia, or pain. So,
Yes.
because this is the month of Ramadan, and most people will only have either their sahur and iftari. So, what are the things that we can include in our diet so as to ensure that we have a healthy, balanced diet on a daily basis?
First of all, when you're taking suhoor, it takes a lot of planning as well to plan out your meals, because in order for you to get that energy throughout the day and to ensure that your hormones are balanced, you need to have complex carbohydrates and a good source of fat. These things are the things that will take you throughout the day. So you can't really just get up, and I know sometimes you would tend to not feel hungry at mornings, and we would just probably have some water or have some tea, and then we are going through the day. It's also good to have like a smoothie with oats, some complex carbohydrates. You could probably add, some ground provisions like sweet potatoes. You could even add lentils and make a smoothie in the morning. What this would do is that it's complex carbs, so it will slowly release the energy throughout the day, and good fats would help balance out your hormones as well during the day. Because there's a slump in the daytime where we get a little irritable when we get hungry. So once you feed your body properly and nourish it, you tend to have that extended time with no irritability coming to the end of the day.
And what are the kinds of foods you would recommend to help those women who may be suffering from some kind of hormonal imbalance to kind of create a balance within their body? Any foods that you would highly recommend?
Well, foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which are things like herrings, tuna, salmon. We have nuts like almonds, seeds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds. These things are very high in omega-3 fatty acids, which are important for hormonal balance. We have high antioxidant foods that you'll find in fruits, pineapples, grapes, apples. You'll find it in chlorophyll from green leafy vegetables. It's an antioxidant. You can even get it liquid, add it to your water, or just increase your green leafy vegetables. The fiber from that as well will take care of the excess hormones that needs to get out of your body if you have a condition that is high estrogen dependent. You can also make sure that you have good liquids within the diet. So some, coconut water, plain water. I would always recommend some water from a good source, because as you know, tap water contains a lot of chemicals added to it so that we can have it. So if we could get like a nice source of spring water or even, rainwater, that can also help. And when we're breaking our fast, we do it with a nice light soup, but a nice light soup that contains lots of vegetables, because you need to gradually, and the dates, which are the holy food of the prophet. Dates are actually very high in complex carbs, and they are a complete meal on its own. So we can have dates with some milk, dates with some honey. Those things are it will take us through the day.
And you can also add dates in your smoothie, right? If you don't.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can add dates to your smoothies as well, along with raisins, cranberries, some nuts, and these kind of things. And that will give you a complete meal for the entire day.
Yeah, because here in UK the timings are so long that sometimes you don't feel like eating anything first thing at 2 o'clock in the
Yes.
morning. So smoothies is something which is kind of more easily digested, I think, and consumed.
And you could pre-prep your smoothies in advance.
Mm,
If you get a nice a container or a Ziploc bag, or even store it in a brown paper bag,
okay.
and so that you won't have to cut it up in the morning. You
Mm,
just basically empty the contents into your blender, and you could add yogurt, because yogurt is high in probiotics, which is good for your tummy,
mm,
and your small intestines need that probiotic food in order to help the microorganisms there produce good hormones for better hormonal balance. We don't understand, the importance of the microbes in our stomach, in
mm.
our intestines, which are very important to keep healthy for good hormonal balance.
You would recommend probiotics as well for a home.
Probiotics, yes. So,
Okay.
you could probably make add yogurt to your smoothies, as I said. You could even have granola with yogurt, or you can make a nice yogurt salad dressing instead of using mayo.
Hmm.
You could use yogurt, add a little olive oil, and that's a really tasty dressing.
Hmm. Um, you gave examples of some of the things associated with hormonal imbalance, and one of the disorders that may result, for example, PCOS. What other things can arise as a result of these hormonal imbalances? Any other?
Well, there are so many disorders out there now
Mm,
pertaining to hormonal imbalances. We have endometriosis. Currently, we are in March, which is Endometriosis Awareness Month.
mhm,
The truth is that there is no cure, and they are still trying to find the reason behind the hormonal imbalance. So it affects like 176 million plus women
wow.
worldwide. So 1 in 10 would have it. And it's a whole body disease and would spread throughout the body. There's also adenomyosis, which is very close to endometriosis.
Mhm.
Um, you can also have adrenal fatigue, where you have, your hormones are so imbalanced, where you experience extreme fatigue. You can't get up in the morning, you're always tired, you can't sleep well at night, and then when you do get to sleep, you wake up tired in the mornings. There are a whole host of, and then there's infertility that may arise
Mm,
because of improper ovulation or due to any other conditions. There's also fibroids, which occur in women,
mhm.
and in men, that you will also have, adrenal fatigue in men,
Right.
as well as, low sperm count,
And this
where
is
testosterone
also as a
has been
result
increased.
of hormonal imbalance in the body.
Yes, because they can also have a high increase in estrogen, because both both men and women have a bit of all the hormones. And if there's high estrogen in men, you will see it pronounced within their body structure,
Mm,
and along with sperm mortality and these kind of things.
mhm. So, what advice would you give them? Should they also make changes in their daily lifestyle and in their diet?
Yes, they should also make changes, add the right foods, exercise, because we need to get exercise functions twofold. It keeps the body toned and healthy, as well as it helps with the excretion process of
Mm,
excess hormones that may be causing, a lot of imbalances, as well as balancing off the ones that are in the body, reducing cortisol that may cause, you know, things like diabetes, hypertension, damages to organs, these kind of things.
right. You spoke about how diet plays an important role in creating a balance within your body when it comes to hormones. And you also spoke about estrogen being one of the important hormones within the body that can maintain that balance. So it's clearly visible that hormones do affect our psychology. But what is the root cause? What kind of triggers the imbalance? How can we prevent it from happening in the first place?
Well, it goes right back to your health, to your gut. Honestly, it goes back to your gut because the gut and brain is connected. And if the microbiome is unhealthy, it will affect your hormone production. It will create an imbalance, causing more of the bad microbiome that will cause an weakened overgrowth, and it will automatically affect your brain function. Because if we look at women who go into menopause, they experience a whole wide range of emotions and changes because the estrogen levels have dropped dramatically. So you tend to have a lot of depression. And there is a school of thought of called nutritional psychiatry, where they have adopted using not only medication but also nutrition to help treat mental disorders.
Right. So, we spoke about prevention in terms of, again, exercise and diet. Are there any other factors that may trigger these changes within the body?
Definitely, we have stress, we have trauma. Sometimes we go through a traumatic event in our lives,
Mhm.
and that in turns affect our entire being, our mental health, our emotional health, our physical health. And if we don't treat the trauma, it our bodies just continue to not progress. We tend to add stress on top of stress. And what I have found very interesting is that our cells actually hold on to that memory of trauma.
Mm.
And if it's not neutralized, it just stays in the body and causes a disintegration literally over time. And we tend to see that our health we doesn't return to the way it used to be until we begin to deal with the trauma. When we neutralize this trauma, change the environment, change our frequency, because we are energy beings, we absorb a lot. And
Yes.
because we absorb a lot, it tends to stay within us because we are like any other living creature.
Mhm.
And if we don't dispel this negative energy or be in an environment that will promote good energy or high frequency, then we'll continue to digress.
And how do you neutralize this? How do you're talking about energy and that we are being
Mm-hmm.
that emit energies and absorb energy at
Yes.
the same time, and that could be negative and positive both.
Mm-hmm.
So
You have
how?
you literally have to look at where you function, your environment. So you examine the people you interact with, number one, because we absorb everything.
Mm.
We have to go back to nature, literally go back to nature, where we have to become one in a space. If we grow a garden, we become one with the earth again. These things do help, going back to nature, doing that deep breathing, getting that fresh air. There's something called grounding, walking bare feet. You know, way back when our people before us never had shoes. And what happens is that rubber soles prevent that electrical charge from the earth reaching into our bodies. So if we discard our rubber soles for a little while and go back to that point where we can become one again with the earth, because there is a lot of science behind that, in that the soles of our feet literally absorb certain nutrients from the earth that is needed for our good health. So that's one aspect of it. I know a lot of psychiatrists tell their clients, go and start a garden and grow some flowers, and that literally, that transfer of energy from one living being to the next, and being in that peaceful environment does change everything, the
So
entire person.
what you're saying is that gardening has a therapeutic effect on the mind
Yes,
and
it
the body.
does. Yes, it
Now,
does. Even if you go hiking, you go on a hike, you go up to the mountains into a forested area, that has a lot of healing properties.
what about people who don't live near the mountains, who don't have access to a garden, who are stuck in a, I don't know, 20th story building? How? How do
You
you
can
ground yourself?
you can start a balcony garden. You can start as grow in a small space. Even if you have plants in your house, you can have indoor plants.
Mm-hmm.
That create a space within your home where you can have a lot of indoor plants. And these plants serve to, some of them neutralize the air. For example, the snake plant would neutralize the air and clean it.
Yeah,
And you could add other things like pothos and aloes. All these things are nice. And the greenery is what relaxes the eyes. You
mm-hmm.
know, our psychology is also based on what we see and what we feel.
Of course.
So if we walk into our apartments and we see this nice area, the seating area with a lot of plants, bookshelf, that's your Zen area. And you go to that area if you have a nice water feature, probably an aquarium or a little fountain leading into an aquarium. All those things kind of create the environment for healing.
So basically, what you're trying is that we should all turn our homes into a sanctuary of
A living
tranquility.
sanctuary. Yes. Because basically when you're out there every day and you're battling with a lot of things, with the workplace, the commute, the traffic, you're dealing with world news, you need to have somewhere where you can come to that will be your safe haven and your sanctuary. So
Yes,
even your familiar relationships are so important. That's why family and marriage and these things are so important. That it creates that safe space for everybody where it could be a safe haven. But if that internal environment, that safe haven is like a hell on earth, then it defeats the purpose. And you're just moving from a stressful environment into another stressful environment. That's why it's so important to change the social setting that you're in
mm-hmm.
and change the environment. And that will automatically begin the healing process. And that will then heal everything else.
You spoke about grounding, and I mean, this is something that most health professionals recommend now, and it's got a tremendous amount of benefits. But again, back to my question, how do you do that if you're, for example, working from home and you're stuck in a tiny little apartment, and there is literally no other place to go to? Maybe the nearest park is miles away, or even if you go to that park, there is no decent area for you to actually remove your shoes and ground yourself because there are like dogs running around or what have you. What other alternatives do we have?
That is true. If you, for example, if you have a small balcony,
Hmm.
you could get like wood chips
Oh,
and create that forest floor effect
okay.
out there on the balcony.
Hmm.
So because the wood chips are natural, so it will kind of mimic that natural, outdoor park effect. So you spread wood chips and then you plant whatever, whether it's vegetables or some flowers. You could plant flowers to invite the pollinators that will create the environment. You could even put a tiny little water feature, as I said, even if it's a little space,
Hmm.
where you can have that running water sound. But the wood chips on the floor will help you to step onto it. And you could then mimic that forest floor effect where you could get a bit of grounding in there.
That's a brilliant idea. You spoke about a water feature, and I know some people find just the sound of running water quite therapeutic, and it has a really soothing and a calming effect on their mind. There is a trend going on right now, and I'm sure you're aware of this too. YouTube is full of videos, which are basically just audio sounds that you can listen to when you have, for example, a migraine or a
Hmm.
tension headache or any kind of pain. They're all often referred to as binaural beats, and it kind of works on different levels of your brain, like the alpha, beta, and theta.
Yes.
Tell us about these things, like how sound can have a therapeutic effect on your mind. How does that work?
It definitely does because sound therapy is a thing.
Uh-huh.
And if you use it in conjunction with everything else, it actually works wonders. And the Quran itself is sound therapy.
Mm,
So I have experience where I had extreme migraines and I would have, put on the Quran,
mm,
go in a dark room, and then, just let your entire nervous system relax. You
yes.
can also do that with the nature sounds.
Mm,
So you can put on the nature sounds and you could be in a meditative state. Just doing deep breathing. You sit in a nice quiet area. That's why it's so important to create that Zen area in your home. So, that space there is literally where you go to if when you need to decompress or distress. And you can have these sounds, the nature sounds being played at the background. And or you can have the Quran being played, which is very good, which is the best form of therapy. And relax, do some deep breathing. You have your plants all around you, they'll be giving you some energy. And that really helps in calming the body down before you go to another activity. Because we need that break between from one area because we function in many roles. So if you're coming from work, then you have to go home to your role, whether it's a mother or wife, a father, a son or daughter. It helps to then decompress between then and there.
No, that's a really good example of how we can utilize the space that we already have, either at home or office even, and just take a moment to focus on our breathing. You were talking about how if somebody has experienced any unpleasant events or incidents, um, and that trauma can also have a effect on the body, where you may end up with some form of chemical imbalance, maybe. You also touched upon migraines, and we know that there are some migraines that are simply associated with hormonal imbalance, or a sudden drop in estrogen is linked to mood disruptions in females. So,
Yes.
what can women do to ensure that their estrogen level remains normal so they can prevent, say, for example, migraines?
Well, it all comes down again to what you put into your body, and you need to monitor because some migraines are also triggered by food.
Uh-huh.
So if you know that certain foods will trigger your migraine, you have to eliminate those. And what I have observed too, sometimes we might want to treat ourselves to something that we're not supposed to have. And we may have that before our menstrual cycle. And then by the time it rolls around, you get this bad headache. Because I would get migraine headaches as well.
Yeah.
But they would last for probably sometimes 3 weeks, depending on
Wow.
what my mood space and head space was and emotional space was prior during the month. So that's why I said that your body holds on to the stress. So if you know you had a stressful month,
Yeah.
it will show in your monthly cycle at the end of the month. If you know whatever you ate, if you ate some junk at the beginning of the month or during the month, it will affect your body at your menstrual cycle. So you have to pay particular attention. You feed your body with good rich antioxidants from fruits. You feed your body with nice fiber rich foods from vegetables. You have lots of liquids. If you don't like plain water, you can do infused water. You could
Yes.
add fruits to your water. You could do the smoothies. All these things will ensure that your body is not overly dehydrated and it's well nourished for that event. Even women who are on birth control, that also affects your migraines and your monthly cycle. Because when you have to switch between hormones, between estrogen and progesterone would have been high to get your body ready to have a baby, but then there's no fertilization. So then hormone drastically drops and estrogen will start to increase. So this drastic switch causes a chemical imbalance in your brain because serotonin also decreases around that time. So that's why you tend to have a lot of mood swings.
Yeah.
Some women may go into a fit of depression for a little bit. And then as soon as the hormones are balance off, probably within about the third, fourth day of your cycle of your menses, you tend to feel brighter. You tend to feel you're coming out of that dark cave that you was in. Because prior to that, just before your period, you would have had a burst of energy, where you would have a burst of oxytocin, serotonin, you would feel happy, happy, happy. And then your
Crash.
period crashed for your period. So to prevent that, you have to really pay attention to what you consume, whether it's whether you consume with your eyes, because sometimes what you look at if you're looking at shows that has a lot of violence, a
Mm.
lot of high emotions, you tend to absorb all of that.
Wow.
So then you tend to be stressed, and you're going into that time of renewal. I call it a period of renewal
Mm.
because you're actually going into a new month. You go into it stressed. So it's not only what you eat, is what it's not what you physically digest, is what you digest mentally, emotionally, and what you look at, who you listen to, what you listen to, or what you speak about. All these things does affect your entire being.
Subhanallah, everything that you're saying, these are the exact advices that were given to us by the Holy Household 1400 years ago, that your stomach is the main root cause of all diseases. These are the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen.
Mm-hmm.
Subhanallah, like the researches that we have today, the scientific evidence that we have today, it just kind of proves everything that they told us 1400 years ago.
Yes. And that's why it's so important to actually consume organic food,
Mm,
because as we develop as a society,
yeah.
we tend to find more easier ways to produce. So
Mm,
then you have genetically altered food. And there have been evidence to show that, especially the wheat, genetically altered wheat, is causing a lot of issues, especially with women. And we find that there are a lot of hormonal imbalances and the development of something called irritable bowel syndrome or even celiac disease,
mm.
which infects, because once it affects your small intestine, your bowels, it would automatically infect your hormonal imbalance. And everything else is thrown into a tailspin because they are all connected. So when you have to treat one person, you can't treat them for one. There's no broad brush way of treating any disorder. You have to treat them specifically to them. It have to be personalized because our microbiomes are all individually different.
Yeah.
No two persons have the same microbiome. So
Mm.
you cannot treat the two persons the same way. You have to make it personal to them.
How do you determine whether you're intolerant to, say, for example, dairy products or gluten, or like you gave examples of certain kinds of cereals? How do you
Mhm.
determine that?
You will have some GI distress, gastric intestinal distress. You tend to find that you will either have constipation or diarrhea,
Mm,
whether it's throughout the month or prior to, if it's a woman, prior to her period, she would tend to have either constipation or diarrhea. Or you would notice with lactose intolerance, if you consume anything with dairy, you find that you will have a bit of diarrhea as well.
mm,
And that would signal, well, something is definitely wrong there, and you will
mm.
have to check that. So then you'll have to now switch to more plant-based sources, because we consume a lot of dairy.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Now we have like a lot of choices in front of us. We've got
Mm-hmm.
oat milk, we've got almond milk, coconut milk, but when you read the ingredients, the quantity of, say, for example, almonds is just 8%, 7%. The rest is just additives.
Additives and
So,
stabilizers, yes.
do we have any healthy alternatives for these kind of things for people who are, um, you know, intolerant to dairy products?
You can also make your own almond milk at home.
Okay.
If you get your almonds
Mhm.
and you blend them up with good water,
Yeah.
not water from the taps that has the chlorine and the fluoride and all of these things.
Mhm.
You can use reverse osmosis water, bottled water, or spring water. You blend it up, and then you can then use a cheesecloth or a nut bag, and you can have your almond milk. You can even add some dates to that to give it a little flavor.
Okay.
It would last for a few days in the fridge. It wouldn't last as long as the ones on the shelf, because remember, they would have additives and stabilizers in them, as
Yeah.
well as a lot of sodium that would affect blood pressure and kidney function and these kind of things.
Yes, yes. And people who are diabetic, for example, or are pre-diabetic, they also struggle to purchase a lot of things because most of these things have some form of sugar content, or the carbs, like some of the carbs that they are not supposed to consume, they end up consuming because they don't have a choice.
Yes. That is the truth. They can focus on things that are natural sugars, sugars that come from, again, dates. But with diabetics, you would have to reduce the amount of dates you eat, because dates are very high in sugar, but it's also very good for balancing out your blood sugar as well. So you have to find the balance between that. And if you're pre-diabetic, it's a matter of observation. So you keep a journal. Okay, I ate this fruit today, and you test your blood sugar and you realize, well, okay, this fruit increased my blood sugar, so I'm not going to have so much of this today. And then you have to look at the timings of your meals as well. And one thing that also helps with managing blood glucose regulation is intermittent fasting.
Yes.
If you notice, during the holy month of Ramadan, everything in your body literally reverses and goes quite back to normal. You will notice your blood sugar levels would kind of level off. Your blood pressure would be normal. Your blood cholesterol levels will be normal. That's if you're watching what you eat for suhoor, as well as when you break your fast for iftar.
Talking about intermittent fasting, that's another thing that's highly recommended in our faith. You know, fasting on Mondays and Thursdays. SubhanAllah, we've
Yes.
been given a cure and a solution for every
For
single
everything.
problem that exists. If only we start kind of, implementing it in our daily life. Um, what do you highly recommend organic products, right? And in an ideal world, yes, we would love to consume organic products. But if you're not living in the countryside or lovely Trinidad like yourself, and we have no choice but to go to these supermarkets and purchase the items that we have, which are not necessarily organic, what alternatives do we have?
Well, I know there are some products on shelves that would have the sign, whether it's organic or not.
Mhm.
You can look for grass-fed products,
Okay.
grass-fed butter, grass-fed milk, grass-fed cheese, meaning that these animals were not grown up on feed. They were allowed to go and be animals in the field, feed on grass, and get naturally fat with no hormones added.
Mhm.
Even eggs. If you look at eggs, some of the chickens are fed a lot of hormones in order to be mass producers. So the egg yolk is a different color. An organic egg yolk will be extremely yellow,
Mm,
while an egg which has been fed with hormones is a pale yellow.
yeah, yeah,
So if you just have to look at the labels. The labels would have it. And then my other option is grow your own food. As in a small space, as you mentioned, if you live in an apartment, or you can have like a small balcony garden where you could be in control of, you know, what you produce.
mm,
But you can also look for, I know there's a lot of health shops available that would have organic products. They would be a little more than
expensive.
the normal. It would be a little expensive because a lot is put into organic farming,
Yeah,
where chemicals and stuff are readily available and easier to use. So yeah, you just have to know where to go, your health food stores, and as well as when you put your own energy into your own food, you literally feed yourself back that good energy.
yeah. I mean, if you can, I mean, I know most people who have nine
Yeah.
to five jobs and work from Monday to Friday. It's not a realistic goal to achieve. But yeah, it's a good idea to be mindful of what you're eating, what you're consuming. Do a little bit of research before you purchase an item from the supermarket. Just check the ingredients, like you said, whether it's grass fed or not, whether it's organic or whether it has some harmful substances, for example, preservatives or even pesticides and these
Yes,
chemicals.
because our farmers use a lot of pesticides in the garden. I've been starting my garden at home, and I've been looking into doing controlling pests organically. There are certain herbs and flowers that you could use that can control the pests. I know there are a few organic gardeners. I mean, out in the UK, there should be organic farmers because that's a big thing now. Here
Yes.
in Trinidad, they're trying to encourage farmers to use less pesticides
Mm,
and more organic ways of farming.
Yes.
to reduce the amount of illness that would happen to the individual, because there is quite an increase in a lot of disorders,
Mm.
not only hormonal, but other disorders are developing as well. Autoimmune diseases are on the rise
Even
dramatically.
these growth hormones that are injected in cows, in goats, hens, for example, to increase the production of either milk or eggs. And then we as humans, when we consume those things, we also kind of digest some of the growth hormones. And um, there are numerous cases where people have developed, for example, fibroids or cysts or
Hmm.
things, even tumors, as a result of consuming those products. So
Yes.
it's not easy to kind of choose eggs that are, not necessarily the hens that laid them, they were not
Hmm.
injected with anything, or even milk or cheese products that you purchase from the market. You can't really determine whether the animal was injected with anything.
Yes.
So what are your options in terms of, say, for example, getting calcium in your diet or vitamin D in your diet? Because we know that a deficiency of vitamin D, calcium, and magnesium has a direct impact on your mood, your behavior, your psychology. So, what options do we have then?
There are plant-based options where legumes are concerned, where there are calcium and magnesium present.
Okay.
There are vitamin D. You will get vitamin D from eggs,
Mhm.
but if the eggs are laced with hormones, then our only option is to go outside and get as much sunlight as we can, because the sunlight interacts with the melanin in our skin,
Mm.
and that produces the vitamin D that's important in a lot of our body's processes. So you have that option again, outdoor gardening, out in the open, taking that fresh air, getting that sunlight, also adds vitamin D. You can find vitamin D in some products, but it will be low levels, not as much as you would find if you get it from the real source. There's also supplementation. You can supplement with vitamin D capsules, even calcium capsules. You can supplement with that as well, because when estrogen levels are low, when we reach a certain age, our body stop absorbing calcium in our bones. And estrogen levels, while when it's depleted, it causes a reduction in bone density,
Uh-huh.
as well as in menopausal women. So
Yes.
then there's that issue of having to take supplements for calcium as well as vitamin D.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, you mentioned omega 3s as well, that it's quite
and omega.
an important, a nutrient for our body, especially for our brain function. And a lot of people who are suffering from depression or anxiety disorders, they often have, um, they're in, they have a decrease of one of these nutrients. It's either calcium or vitamin D or magnesium or omega 3s. You also mentioned to avoid certain foods that trigger migraines or trigger hormonal imbalance. What are those foods that we should kind of avoid at all cost?
But there are foods that cause inflammation. So it depends on what triggers your migraine. Some people, nuts will trigger their migraines. Some
Mhm.
people, it would be cheese. Some people, it would be milk. So it really depends. So if you find your triggers, then you could reduce those in your diet. If you know it's dairy, then you could have dairy-free milk. You can have nut milk or plant-based milk. You can add dates to it, as I said. You could use oat. You can have oat milk. All these are good. If you know that cheese is causing the problem, you can do a plant-based cheese. I have made cheese from chickpeas flour,
You've made it yourself.
and yes, and it as an alternative to having dairy cheese, and it tastes just as well. And you can find the alternatives to vegan cheese alternatives if you still want to have that kind of cheese in your diet. So
Pizza.
and you tend to keep away from the nuts that would actually cause the flare up, anything that gives an inflammatory response. the fried foods, fast foods, and these things. Yeah.
And we have this culture. I don't know about Trinidad, but let me tell you about the Indian and Pakistani culture. We love deep fried food soon after breaking our fast. And I know
Yes.
it's bad. It's not good for you, especially when you've been fasting all day. It's the last thing you should be consuming. But that's the culture we have, right? So, what
Yes.
about alternatives to deep fried food?
You can oven bake instead of frying. You can oven fry, or you can saute.
Mhm.
You can also steam, which is very good. I know there's this air fryer now
Yes.
that you can just put your stuff in there so you won't have to deep fry
Mhm.
in oil. Those are very healthy alternatives.
Right.
So it's just a matter of finding a new way to make these foods that we like. I know there are lots of sweets and things that we like. So it's to find an alternative to creating those in the same way.
You mentioned that endometriosis, for example, and PCOS, they cannot really be cured. They can be treated but not cured. Um, what about other things that you mentioned associated with hormonal imbalance? Can they be cured, or they're all like treatable but not, you can't get rid of them?
It's all about managing your symptoms. You can manage your symptoms to a point where it literally looks like it's dissipating. You can you can heal your body, You just have to put your body, your mind space in the right place.
Mhm.
And your spirit is such a formidable force that once it has been reeled in, it has been cleansed, purified, gotten back to that place where we were before, before all of the trauma and these things. That that alone is a healing force, an energy force. I believe that all diseases are treatable and healable. It's just that we have not come across the the way to do it.
Mhm.
But there is a cure for all diseases. We just have to find the way and utilize the tools that were given to us by the Holy Household. We
Yeah.
have been given all of the tools. It's just for us to access it and use it to our advantage.
In fact, they have given a whole list of foods to be consumed, and some of them are highly, highly recommended. Like you give an example of dates, then we have figs and olives, and
Hmm.
yeah, so many other things that are really good for you. They're full of like nutrition, and intermittent fasting is one of them.
Yes.
And you also mentioned how the things that we hear, see, talk, everything emits energy, positive or negative, and it's up to us what we allow our bodies to absorb in the end of the day.
Yes, it does.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Fatwa. I'm sure our viewers must have really benefited from all the advice and information that you shared today. Thank you so much for taking the time out in this holy month. And I wish you all the best for the wonderful work that you're doing in terms of healing and helping women around the world to live a fulfilling, healthy life.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here again with you.
Thank you so much. Jazakallah khairan. And to all our viewers who are watching this program right now, if you have any questions for Fadwa, if you would like to leave your feedback about this program, or if there's any topic that you would like us to cover in our future episodes, please message us on our Facebook and YouTube page for Hidayat TV, or you can also call the Hidayat TV studio number and leave your details, and inshallah, we will get back to you. Till next Saturday, look after yourselves. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.